The Pittsburgh Steelers, the steel curtain, the red, blue, and yellow. That's kind of sounds weird, but anyway. My sworn enemy as a Patriots fan. Anyway, the Pittsburgh Steelers started out life in 1933 in the NFL. Unfortunately, they had some very shitty seasons, including one year when they actually merged with the Chicago Cardinals and became the Card Pits, or Carpets, if you will. Unfortunately for them, they didn't win a single game. Pittsburgh was one of the most hard luck cities in America, not because of their steel industry, but the football team. Pittsburgh had a bevy of great quarterbacks that were once property of the Steelers, but never turned out to be Steeler legends. Len Dawson and Johnny Unitas, anyone? That's right. They were once Pittsburgh property, but the Steelers didn't like him. Pittsburgh decided to ramble the dice and get Bobby Lane in 1958 from the Lions for their quarterback. I forget his name, but anyway, Pittsburgh grew to live to regret it. Chuck Noll was actually one of the best head coaches of all time, but people forget that his first season with the Steelers, they actually went 1-13. The Steelers were just that desperate to fall on their face. But thankfully, that 1-13 season actually helped the Steelers because they got the number one draft pick, which was Terry Bradshaw from L Tech. Bradshaw was an immediate success story for the Steelers. And they also got some great players. Franco Harris, John Stallworth, Lynn Swan, Rocky Blyer, Mean Joe Green, Ernie Holmes, Tony Dungy to a lesser extent, Roy Jarella. You get the picture. So the Steelers had this one magical run in 1972 that we'll talk about later. But anyway, the Steelers a couple of years later, in 1975, were on the precipice of greatness. They won a chance to play the Vikings in the 1975 Super Bowl, Super Bowl IX. Unfortunately for the Vikings, they didn't see the powerful Steelers come roaring in, and the Steelers used their powerful offense and steel curtain defense to take down the Vikings once for all. And then Pittsburgh came back the next year in 1976 as they took down the Dallas Cowboys, which was amazing in itself. But thanks to Lynn Swan's ballet-style catches, the Steelers were in back-to-back Super Bowls and won back-to-back Super Bowls. Pittsburgh would have a few missteps, but in 1979, in one of the most famous Super Bowls of all time, they took care of the Dallas Cowboys 35-31. It was a good game. Both teams played their hearts out. Bradshaw was the better of the two quarterbacks, better than Staubach. And then Pittsburgh came back in 1980 for the Super Bowl and beat the LA Rams 31-19. It was actually too close for comfort, but Pittsburgh got lucky when Bradshaw made a heave to John Stallworth for a 75-yard touchdown. Unfortunately, Pittsburgh's age started to show, and they were falling behind. Terry Bradshaw got hurt a couple of times and couldn't really do too much. Pittsburgh decided to forego Dan Marino, who played at the University of Pittsburgh. He actually played games not far from Three River Stadium, and then they freaking decided to have him get dropped down and picked by Miami. That was a big mistake for Pittsburgh. No one could replace Terry Bradshaw. The Steelers decided to play defense all the time, and they got lucky. Their defense helped them in the mid-90s get to playoff positions. Chuck Noll was out, Bill Cowher was in. And Pittsburgh had some great moments. 1996, they went to the Super Bowl, but not before the Colts missed a Hail Mary. Pittsburgh, unfortunately, had the bad luck of Neil O'Donnell throwing 3 interceptions to Larry Brown, who basically was just standing there, and he got the interceptions, easy peasy lemon squeezy. So anyway, the Steelers got to that Super Bowl. They lost to Dallas. They made a few big moves. 2002 was supposed to be their year. They were hosting the AFC title game against the New England Patriots that don't have Tom Brady. They have Drew Bledsoe playing quarterback. Unfortunately for the Steelers, the Patriots went into their ball yard and beat them. Worse yet to follow was in 2004 when the Pittsburgh Steelers went 15-1 with rookie Ben Roethlisberger on the roster. He led them to magical wins. Unfortunately, the Patriots went back to Pittsburgh and beat them again. Again, yikes. Sigh, what can you do? The next season, though, they actually had a playoff comeback against the Cleveland Browns, which was memorable in 2003. But anyway, 2006 playoffs were memorable with Pittsburgh being the sixth seed, having to go to Cincinnati, and thanks to Kimo von Offland's hit on Carson Palmer, which was deemed clean, since he lost their quarterback and lost their marbles, as Pittsburgh went to Cincy, beat them, and then would take on the number one seed Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning and a lot of other supporting players. Pittsburgh shocked themselves by going in for a late-breaking touchdown, but then they fumbled the ball, and Nick Harper, number 25 for the Colts, picked it up. Unfortunately for him, Roethlisberger actually made a swipe tackle and got Harper down before he could turn it for 6. Colts go downfield. They try to kick a field goal to tie the game. Roethlisberger that tackle is lower because Fender blew it as the Colts choked it all away. So now what for Pittsburgh? Well, they would face the Denver Broncos in Denver for a chance to go to the championship against the Seattle Seahawks, and Pittsburgh won. Pittsburgh then beat Seattle 21-10, not because of the officiatory gaps, but because of a gadget play that Randall L., their star running back, who once was quarterback for the Indiana Hoosiers, actually threw a touchdown pass. I forget who caught it, but anyway, Pittsburgh won that game and the Super Bowl. Number 4. So anyway, Pittsburgh, a few years later in 2009, got to the Super Bowl, played the Cardinals, and it was a magical one of the best Super Bowls of all time. Few people thought the Arizona Cardinals could hang with Pittsburgh, but they did, and it took a San Antonio Holmes toe touchdown in the final minute to win the game for the Steelers. Pittsburgh, a couple years later, would go on to win another title, that being the 2011 championship against the Green Bay Packers for their 6th title. And for 8 years, they had the most Super Bowls in franchise history. Patriots have just tied them. Pittsburgh's had a few minor setbacks, and this is being recorded on September 19th, 2019. Ben Roethlisberger was out for the season. Mason Rudolph will have to come in and be quarterback, but he was pretty good at Oklahoma State. Hopefully, he can translate that Cowboy charm into a Steelers thing. No Le'Veon Bell. He held out. He's gone. Antonio Brown is gone. So basically, Pittsburgh doesn't have a lot of stars. I don't think they even have Paul Longman anymore. So anyway, the 1972 Pittsburgh Steelers will be the what if for all these reasons, because they were heroes of one of the greatest games of all time, the Immaculate Reception. In a very tight game, 7-6, when Ken Stabler scored a touchdown run, Pittsburgh had forfeited a long ways away. When all of a sudden, Bradshaw decides to unleash it. And after a collision between John Fuqua, the Pittsburgh receiver, and the Oakland defender, the ball landed in the hands of young Franco Harris, who scooped the ball just above the turf and ran it down the left side of the field for a touchdown. Now, of course, we don't have any super evidence on Franco Harris if the ball had dropped before he caught it, or, as the NFL usually did, the NFL had a rule that if it touches 2 offensive players in a row, then it can't be a completed pass. Did it go off the Oakland defender, or did it go off Fuqua? We will never know. So the Steelers ended up going to the AFC title game against the Miami Dolphins and lost to the Dolphins, who then went on to beat the Skins to get their perfect season. So it's obvious what we're going to do in this one. We're going to be doing the Super Bowl. Oh, yes, we will be doing the 1973 Super Bowl, Steelers and Redskins, and maybe Pittsburgh does get a Super Bowl title 2 years early, or the Redskins can get a title way earlier. So anyway, we're going to be ready to go. We are at the LA Memorial Coliseum, Pittsburgh and Washington, both 11-3. That's amazing. Yeah, no Lynn Swan, no John Stallworth. They were drafted later on in years. Washington, hopefully they could do a lot better in this Super Bowl than the one against Miami in real life. Well, nothing much happens in this Super Bowl until the second quarter when Terry Bradshaw on 3rd and goal decides to pass it to Franco Harris, who walks into the end zone touchdown, 7-0. So it's 7-0. Roy Gerella hit the field goal. Roy Gerella from Saskatchewan, 10-0. At 10-0, Washington, final minutes of the half, first and 10 of the 13, they gave Haraway the ball for a touchdown. They get the extra point at 13-7. Make it 10-7. Pittsburgh calls a timeout with 44 seconds left. Franco Harris gets a 49-yard run before going out of bounds at the 23. And then Davis runs for 19 yards. Shanklin gets a touchdown pass from Bradshaw, 16-7. 17-7, excuse me. And then Pittsburgh, first possession of the second half, they go all the way down to the 7 when John Fuqua gets a pinch right touchdown to make it 24-7. At 24-7, you can't blame Washington for being a little anxious. With about 6 minutes left, 3rd and 12 at the 13 of Washington, Bradshaw gives Lewis a pass. Frank Lewis gets a touchdown to make it 30-7. Basically, the game is over. Washington decides to just play for fun. They get a touchdown pass to Larry Brown, and then they go for a 2-point convert to make it 30-15. Pittsburgh doesn't really care. They even get a touchdown. Franco Harris decides to run up the middle for a touchdown. 37-15 is your final score. Amazing that the Steelers would have had the Super Bowl a few years earlier. They basically outplayed Washington. You see the scoring summary. Franco Harris was named Super Bowl MVP. Franco from Bradshaw, Gerala, Charlie Haraway, Ron Shanklin, John Fuqua, Frank Lewis, Larry Brown, Franco Harris. Good old Franco Harris, the guy who did the Immaculate reception, saved them. Holy smokes, 154 yards on the ground for Harris. And Fuqua went 143 on the ground. That's amazing. The running game works. Bradshaw only had to complete 8 of 12 passes for 78 yards, but 3 touchdowns in his 8 completions. Frank Lewis's only reception was a touchdown. One of 2 Franco Harris's receptions were touchdowns, and one of Shanklin's 3 receptions was a touchdown. Billy Kilmer, 6 for 25, 49 yards picked off, and then they went with Sonny Jurgensen. Too little, too late. Jurgensen got a touchdown pass to Larry Brown, but Jurgensen should have started the game. But that's the problem. The only interception is Mel Blount. Gerella, as you can see right down here, made one from 27, but missed from 46. Knight missed a 43-yarder, but it doesn't matter as the Washington Redskins get skinned hard. Hopefully nobody gets offended by that. But anyway, the Pittsburgh Steelers are your 1972 champions. They get the Immaculate reception, and then now they're kings of football.